Hi, Virgo. I have been sitting with what I am about to tell you for a long time, longer than I usually sit before I press record. Not because I am uncertain about what I am reading, because I am uncertain about the right way to deliver something that is going to land hard, something that is going to reach a place in you that has not been fully touched yet, a place that has been protected, insulated, kept at a distance from the full weight of a truth that has been present for a long time, but that you have not yet allowed yourself to sit with completely. And I want to be honest with you about why I am choosing to deliver it anyway. Not to cause pain, not to pull something comfortable out from under you for the sake of dramatic revelation, but because I have learned in all the time I have been doing this work that the truths we protect ourselves from most carefully are almost always the truths that are most trying to free us. That the thing we have been most reluctant to fully see is the thing whose seeing changes everything. And what I am about to tell you is that kind of truth, the kind that hurts because it is real, the kind that makes you cry not because something is being taken from you, but because something you have been carrying without fully naming it is finally being named. And the naming of it, the full arrival of it into your conscious awareness, is going to feel like loss, even though it is actually the beginning of something necessary, something that could not start until you let yourself fully see what I am about to show you. Let me start with something gentle before I get to the hard part, because I think context matters here. Because I think you deserve to understand why this truth has been so difficult to face fully before I ask you to face it. There is a person in your life, or a person who was in your life, someone you have loved or trusted or invested in or built something with or believed in the particular way that you believe in people when they matter to you, which is fully, which is thoroughly, which is with the kind of commitment that does not allow for the comfortable hedging of someone who keeps one foot outside the door just in case. You go in fully when you go in. That is how you love. That is how you trust. And that fullness, that complete and unhedged investment in the people you choose, is one of the most beautiful things about you. It is also the thing that makes what I am about to say land with the particular weight it is going to land with. Because when you invest fully, the truth about what you invested in fully is not a small thing to receive. It is not something you can process from a comfortable distance. It arrives at the level of the investment, and your investment was deep, which means the truth is going to reach deep, and I need you to be ready for that depth. Before I take you into it, here is what I am seeing. This person, the one your mind went to when I began speaking, has not been showing up for you the way you have been showing up for them. I want to be careful about how I say this, because it is not as simple as they are bad and you are good. It is not a story of villain and victim. It is something more subtle than that, and in some ways more painful than that, because villains are easy to leave. What is actually happening is harder to leave. What is actually happening is this: the relationship you have with this person, or have had, has been operating on an unequal exchange for longer than you have been willing to fully acknowledge. And the inequality has not been obvious. It has not been the kind that shows up cleanly and announces itself as unfair. It has been the subtle kind, the kind that lives in the small moments, in who reaches first, in who adjusts when adjusting is needed, in who makes more room, in who holds more carefully, in who is more available, more forgiving, more willing to absorb the cost of the relationship staying intact. And for a long time, you have been explaining this inequality to yourself in ways that made it acceptable. They are going through something. They show love differently. They have wounds that make closeness difficult. They will be different when things settle. All of those explanations had some truth in them. That is what made them work so well as explanations. That is what made them feel like understanding rather than excuse making. But here is what I need you to hear. The explanation for someone's behavior is not the same as an entitlement to continue receiving it. Understanding why someone cannot meet you does not obligate you to keep showing up at a meeting point where you consistently arrive and they consistently do not. The truth that is going to hurt is this: they have known. That is the part that is going to land hardest when it fully arrives in you. They have known about the inequality, not with perfect clarity, not with the kind of self-awareness that would have produced immediate accountability, but with enough awareness to have made different choices if different choices had been their priority. They have known that you were giving more. They have known that you were adjusting more, forgiving more, waiting more, hoping more, investing more than was being returned. And they have allowed it, not maliciously, not with a deliberate decision to take advantage of your goodness, but with the particular passive permission that people give themselves when someone else's love makes the not changing comfortable enough. When someone else's continued presence, regardless of the level of reciprocation, removes the urgency to examine whether the reciprocation is sufficient. Your love made it comfortable for them not to grow into what you needed. Your patience made it possible for them to remain at a level of showing up that was less than what you deserved. Your consistency, the very consistency that is one of your most extraordinary qualities, became, in this dynamic, the thing that removed the consequence they would have needed to feel in order to become more. And they knew that at some level, they knew, and they stayed comfortable inside your patience rather than rising to meet it. I need to sit with you in this for a moment because I do not want to deliver this truth and move on from it before it has had the chance to actually land, before it has had the chance to do what it needs to do in you, which is not break you. I want to be very clear about that. What this truth is going to do is not break you. You are not breakable in the way that would require this kind of protection. What it is going to do is something more precise than breaking. It is going to clarify. It is going to illuminate something that has been sitting in the shadow of the explanations and the adjustments and the generous interpretations, something that you have been sensing without naming, a feeling that has lived in you, quiet and persistent, underneath all the hoping and the patience and the generous reading of their limitations. A feeling that has been trying to tell you something for longer than you have been ready to hear it. And the feeling is this: you deserve more than this. Not more than them as a person, more than this as a dynamic. more than this level of reciprocation, more than this quality of being met, more than a relationship where you are the primary architect of its continuation, where you are the one who holds it together, where your love is the engine and their participation is the passenger. You deserve to be someone's engine, not someone's passenger. And the tears that are coming when this truth fully lands are not tears of defeat. They are the tears of someone who has finally given themselves permission to grieve the gap between what they were given and what they deserved. Let me tell you about the other part of the truth, the part that is harder to say and perhaps harder to hear, because the truth is not only about them, it is also about you, about the role you played in this dynamic. Not as blame, never as blame, as understanding, as the specific, useful, forward-moving kind of self-knowledge that allows you to take something different into what comes next. You stayed longer than your own knowing said you should. You gave more than the return justified. You bent further toward their limitations than the relationship required. You absorbed more of the cost of the dynamic than was yours to absorb. And the question that the truth is asking you to sit with is why? Not as self-criticism, as genuine, honest, compassionate inquiry into the pattern. Because this dynamic, this particular configuration of overgiver and undershower did not arrive randomly in your life. It arrived because something in you recognized it as familiar, as the known shape of how love works. Something in your history, something you were shown early about what love looks like and what it requires and what the acceptable terms of its exchange are, created in you a tolerance for this particular imbalance, a comfort with giving more than you receive, a suspicious unfamiliarity with love that does not require you to work hard for it, that does not require you to prove yourself deserving of it. That simply offers itself at a level that matches what you bring, without you having to earn the matching. That discomfort with ease in love, that lingering suspicion that love which arrives without significant cost is probably not real love, is the pattern underneath the pattern. And it is the thing that needs to be seen as clearly as the person who benefited from it. Because seeing it is what changes it. And changing it is what ensures that what comes next looks different from what came before. I want to speak to the crying because I named it in the title and I named it deliberately, and I want to honor it rather than rushing past it. The crying that is coming, if it has not already begun, is necessary. It is not a symptom of weakness. It is not evidence that you cannot handle the truth. It is the physiological process through which a truth that has been held at a managed distance finally arrives in the body, finally lands in the place where all real knowing lives, not in the mind where it can be processed and organized and kept at an intellectual distance, in the chest, in the throat, in the specific place in you that has been holding the weight of this dynamic without the relief of having it fully acknowledged. The tears are that acknowledgement. The tears are your system saying, yes, this is real. This is what was happening. This is what I have been carrying, and I am ready now to put it down. Let the crying happen. Do not manage it into a more dignified form. Do not cut it short because being in it feels like too much. Do not redirect it into analysis before it has completed itself. Let it go all the way through. Because grief that is allowed to complete itself produces something on the other side that managed grief cannot produce: a clarity, a lightness, a specific quality of having arrived at something rather than continuing to orbit it. The crying is the arrival. Let it be complete. And trust that what comes after the completion is not more pain. It is the beginning of something genuinely different. I need to tell you something about what this truth is actually doing for you, because I think the hardness of receiving it can make it difficult to see its purpose, can make it feel like something being taken rather than something being given. This truth is freeing something, specifically, practically, in real terms, that are going to make your life concretely different in the days and weeks that follow you receiving it. It is freeing the energy that has been going into maintaining the story, into the sustained work of explaining the inequality, into the ongoing adjustment of your expectations to match what was actually available rather than what you actually needed, into the daily, quietly exhausting work of wanting more than you were receiving, and finding ways to make that acceptable. That energy is enormous. You do not fully know how enormous it is because you have been spending it for so long that you have stopped registering it as expenditure. It has just become the background cost of the dynamic, something you carry the way you carry your own weight, without noticing it as separate from you. But it is separate. And when this truth lands completely, when the story stops needing to be maintained, when the explaining and the adjusting and the making acceptable falls away, what returns to you is that energy. All of it. Suddenly available for something else, for your own life, for your own becoming, for the people and the possibilities and the connections that have been waiting just outside the amount of space and attention and hope you had available, while so much of it was being directed towards something that was not returning it. Let me speak to what happens after, because I do not want to leave you in the grief without giving you the view from the other side of it, without showing you what the truth makes possible once you have moved through the initial weight of receiving it. After this truth lands, after you have let it arrive completely and grieved what needs to be grieved, something is going to become visible that the dynamic was obscuring: your own appetite, your own desire, the specific things you actually need in a connection rather than the things you have been teaching yourself to be satisfied with, the version of love you actually want rather than the version you have been adapting yourself to accept. That appetite is real. It has been real the entire time. It has just been buried under the adjustments, under the generous interpretations, under the work of making what was available feel like enough. When the adjusting stops, when the making enough stops, the appetite surfaces, and with it, a clarity about what you are actually looking for, what you are actually worth, what you are actually willing to accept moving forward. And that clarity, that specific, located, no longer negotiable clarity about what you need, is going to change who you let close, how you read people, what you notice in the early stages of connection that tells you whether this person is capable of meeting you, whether they are someone who will grow towards you or someone who will remain comfortable inside your patience without feeling the need to rise to match it. The truth is going to give you that calibration precisely, permanently. in a way that serves you for the rest of your life. In every connection that comes after, that is what the hurt is for. That is what the crying produces. Not just the release, the calibration, the permanent hard-won, cannot be taught, only earned calibration of someone who finally knows exactly what they are worth. I want to say something about the person, about how to hold them after this truth arrives, because I think this is important and I do not want to skip it. This truth is not an invitation to replace love with anger, not an invitation to rewrite your experience of them into something darker than it was in order to make the leaving or the releasing or the repositioning feel more justified. The love was real. What you felt was genuine. What you gave was given freely and from a real place. And they are a person with their own wounds and their own limitations and their own history that produced the particular ways they fall short. None of that makes what happened acceptable, but all of it makes it human. And you can hold both things. You can see the truth about the dynamic clearly and still hold the person with compassion. You can release something that was not serving you without having to hate what you are releasing in order to justify the release. The releasing is justified by the truth, not by the transformation of love into resentment. You are allowed to see clearly and still be kind. You are allowed to choose differently and still wish them well. You are allowed to stop giving more than you receive and still recognize that they were doing the best their wounds allowed them to do. That recognition does not require you to stay in a dynamic that costs you more than it gives. Understanding someone is not the same as remaining available to them. You can do the first without being obligated to the second. Let me close with what I most want you to carry from this reading. Not the pain of it, not the grief of what it reveals. The gift, because underneath the hurt there is a gift, and I want to make sure you can see it even through the tears. The gift is this: you loved fully. In a world where most people protect themselves from full investment, where most people keep enough of themselves back to insulate against the full cost of being wrong about someone, you gave completely. That is not something to be ashamed of. It is not something to harden yourself against in the future. It is one of the most extraordinary things about you. The capacity to love without the constant hedging of someone who is always calculating the risk. The willingness to be fully in something while you are in it. The truth is not asking you to become smaller in how you love. It is asking you to become more precise about who you love that way. More discerning at the entrance. More willing to let the calibration I described do its work before you offer the fullness rather than after. The fullness itself is not the problem. The fullness is the gift you bring to love. The problem was only the vessel you poured it into. And the truth is simply redirecting the pour towards someone who has the capacity to hold what you give, who brings equivalent fullness to the meeting, who does not stay comfortable inside your patience, but is instead moved by your love to be more than they were before you loved them. That person exists, that connection is available, and it becomes available to you the moment this truth finishes doing what it came to do. Let it do its work. Let the tears come. Let the grief be complete. and then let yourself be free. Because on the other side of this truth is the love you were always capable of giving. Finally finding someone who is capable of giving it back